supposedly. Well,
Yep.
ready?
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for the Bloomfield Local School District on September 13th, 2021, here at the brand new elementary school cafeteria. Mr. Biggin, can I get roll call, please?
Mr. Abbott?
Present.
Mr. Bratton?
Present.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Present.
Mrs. Sherman?
Present.
Number 3, pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, approval of agenda. We do have one change to make on page 3. That's item 9C6. Where it says approve the employment of Marcy Walters for 2.5. That should be effective date of September 14th, not the 7th.
Oh, 6.
6, yep.
Okay.
On page 3.
Got it.
Everybody got it? Anybody see anything else? Any questions on the agenda?
No, sir.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mrs. Sherman, seconded by Mr. Rod Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes. Item 5, approve the minutes from the August 9th, 2021 regular meeting. Reviewed those, didn't see anything. Need a motion? Motion made by Mr. Abbott, seconded by Mr. Jimmy Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson? Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes. Item 6, public participation. Mr. Green?
Yes, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Great.
This is a great school, at least what little I've seen. Can't update Apple Maps because I got lost. Well, not really at that. So one of the high schoolers is pointing in the right direction. I have 2 kids in the school district. One's a senior and one's in middle school, and a third one on the way in. We moved this area because of the school district. And this school district is doing well. My concern right now is masks. You guys are doing the right thing with masks right now, making it optional. I want to make sure that you guys continue to do that. It's working out good for the school, working good for the students, and in my eyes, everyone in the community. I think some of you guys would want to reach out to the other school districts like Amanda, because they're trying to do what you're doing, but they're hitting more road bumps than you guys are, or they're spineless. I don't know. But I want to thank you guys for doing the right thing with the mask and all that hoopla. Second, one thing I do not want my kids to be taught is anything that has to deal with CRT, 1619 project, critical race theory. Let's see, we got all kinds of spin-offs of that: diversity, equity, inclusion, white fragility, all this BS. It's not history, it's not education. To maintain our good educational standards, we can't be teaching that garbage. I'm not saying don't teach history, but teach it the right way. And that's not the right way, where we make victims out of people that aren't victims. And all that other bull crap that goes in there. Is there any way that I can get confirmation that you guys aren't teaching any of this or some derivative of in any of our classes?
Yeah, Mr. Green, so I appreciate your participation at the last couple meetings and being committed to your points. What I can share with you is that we teach the Ohio standards. In the Ohio standards, the model curriculum in K-12 has nothing to do with the CRT, critical race theory. The Department of Education has publicly stated that the Ohio model curriculum in the K-12 standards that our students are assessed on is does not include critical race theory, and that is not part of our locally adopted curriculum. And critical race theory it's a much higher level of more of a doctorate level theology analysis.
Well, some parts of it is, but we can dumb it down to what a lot of school districts are doing across the nation and teaching it to our children.
I can tell you that we've never proposed, I haven't heard the board discuss wanting to introduce it or propose it, and it's not been an approved curriculum at the Boone Carroll Local School District or in Ohio's K-12 schools, according to the Ohio Department of Education.
I appreciate that. And that's really all I would like to say, and thank you for doing a good job here and doing the right thing with the mask and all that other crazy stuff. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7, treasurer's recommendation and reports. Mr. Bidder.
Okay, item 7A is approve the August financial statements for a total expense of $9,321,627.73, including just over $6.8 million in consortium expenses. Page 14 of the electronic copy has the summary for August. Real estate and public utility tax collections coming in, really no surprise there with the new construction for real estate and the public utility decreasing, just based upon the very nature of the depreciation of the assets of the companies. So kind of exactly what we were forecasting. Some good news on the casino revenue distributions. Again, this is based upon a 6-month look at all the casinos in Ohio, and one of the agreements when these were initially set up was that based on their gross revenue, there would be distributions to local government. Certainly it's based on gross revenue, so last year at this time it was had decreased quite a bit, but the collection this August was approximately $64 per student. So you can see the difference between this year for the casino revenue and as opposed to last year. So certainly the activity kicked up.
Was that closer to what it was pre-COVID?
This was the highest it's been
Okay.
since I've seen that. So it's
Awesome.
Yep. Supplies and materials line item, as we carry this through, will be higher this year. We talked about delaying our curriculum purchases last year to 1 year, getting back on target this year with our 6-year science purchase, as well as math. So just kind of a little caveat there as you look at some of the expenditures and why they're a little bit higher in certain areas. You see the carryover there, that'll dissipate, decrease as we move further into to the fiscal year. Any questions on the financial statements or the checks written during the month?
No question. I'll make the motion. Second. I'll second. Made by Mr. Bratton, second by Mr. Rod Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Item B is to approve the first permanent appropriations for fiscal '22 as listed, general fund through Title 2A. All of the non-general funds are either grants, we still have a little bit of the construction left, some of the district and student managed activities, so those are revenue driven. Obviously the main thing that we're looking at here is the general fund budget, and this is really a culmination of our 9-month budgeting process that began back in January with the tax budget, throughout the planning sessions, incorporates all of the increases to salaries, insurances, contracts we've signed. I talked about the curriculum purchases and the wish list, and here we are 9 months later to approve the official budget. I broke down the general fund. I won't go through it too much. Again, we've gone through this quite a few times, so just kind of want to put a bow on this and move forward. But page 28 of your electronic board packet has the general fund budget, again, $22,267,965, broken up in 2 ways like we always do, one by object and then also by department. You can see the increases there. It shouldn't be any surprise. We've talked about some of the factors and some of the derivatives that have driven us to the budget at this point. When we compare it to revenues, believe it or not, the state is still trying to sort out some of the finer points of the funding. So we still have not been put on the new funding formula yet. That should occur in October. What I'd like to do is, once we have some more certainty, have a finance meeting with Mr. Johnson, Mr. Bratton, Mr. Hahn, get a little more in depth about how our revenues compare to our budget. But at this point, I think we're going to be close in terms of revenues and expenditures, really about even, quite frankly. This total budget represents an increase of 3.34% over last year's actual expenditures, so I feel like we're able to accomplish our educational goals. We've added some staff, as we talked about, but still, I feel like we're staying within some of the fiscal constraints that we do have. So with that, again, as we get more information, we'll have a 5-year forecast in November. We'll have a finance meeting, and we'll continue to fine-tune the general fund budget. No changes can be made to the appropriations without further board action, so this establishes us as a permanent appropriation. Any questions on
What's
the?
the other instruction? Why is that down?
It's a good question. As we've talked about, with the new state funding formula, they made 2 changes. One is they are funding schools at net. So they used to send the money to us in a gross amount, and then we would send it off to the open enrollment schools. We would send it to the community schools. We would send it to the special ed scholarships. So it came in as a gross revenue and an expense.
Okay,
So the open enrollment revenue and funding will drop, but there's also a corresponding drop in other instruction because
that's what we used to pay out.
That's what we used to pay out.
And we're no longer doing that.
Exactly.
Got it.
So that's a good
Totally
question.
understand.
Yep.
Mr. Bigham, what have you forecasted as far as like with transportation from a fuel perspective? Because I mean, previously it was $3, obviously just in regular gas, but I mean.
Yeah, we put a 5% increase in there. We're still trying to feel out these new routes. Quite frankly, right now, we're a little all over the place, so we might need to adjust that as we go through, but, yeah, we're just anticipating to keep increasing. We were hoping to offset some of that with decreased miles, with more of a central location here at the elementary, but, we haven't had a chance to truly analyze, the routes yet.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Sherman, seconded by Mr. Jimmy Johnson. Bigham.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Item C is authorize Meta Solutions to advertise and receive bids on behalf of the Bloom Carroll Local School District for the purchase of 2 conventional school buses. This does not mean that we have to make this purchase. This would be for next year. But it at least allows us to get the pricing bids from Meta with many districts and a lot better pricing than we would be able to get on our own going out to bid. So this just starts the process if we wanted to purchase the buses next year.
It's exactly what we've done with yours.
Yes, yes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second, please. I'll make the second. Motion made by Mr. Abbott, seconded by Mr. Bratton. Mr. Bigham.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
And finally, we're thankful to be able to recognize the following donations to the Bloom Carroll Local School District: Keller Farms, plants for the elementary school out here. Mark Weedy, Wiggle Seat, also for the Bloom Carroll Elementary School. And Anchor Hawking, thank them for donating 100 glass jars for the STEM lab at the high school.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
Can I get a motion for something?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Rod Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Sherman. Mr. Bigham, roll call.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
And Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 8, old business, nothing there. And item number 9, I'll turn it over to Mr. Vaughn for superintendent recommendation reports.
So a lot has been taking place since the last board meeting in early August. Sadly, one of those events was the passing of Mrs. Linda King, a longtime K-2 secretary. She battled an illness that she incurred this summer, and Linda had worked for the district for 18 years, 15 years in full-time, and 3 years as a substitute. She was literally a mom to all the students that are currently in our district that started here in kindergarten, first, second grade. We will miss her. Her family will miss her. She's a wonderful person, and And I would ask that those in attendance and the board join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of Mrs. King. Thank you. The next thing I kind of wanted to point out, a lot of you saw this on Friday night. We had a home football game on Friday night, and Saturday, the 11th, is designated as Patriot Day to recognize the anniversary of 9/11. And this was the 20th anniversary this year, and I was really proud of the school and our community, and something Mr. Little and I had talked about doing last year, and making it become part of a tradition at Boone Carroll. But we did a military appreciation night, and we asked community members and people that come to these events all the time, even people that are not our community, that are maybe family or friends, to come to the game and be recognized. And they filled out a form about their service, and we individually recognized each one. We probably had 50 to 60 people for the first year. I was really happy to see the participation. It was well received. The students, proudly ran out onto the field. The seniors carried American flags, handed them off to their mom or dad or a family member. But it was just it was a neat thing, and especially being the 20th anniversary of 9/11, just think it's important that we always take the opportunity to recognize the sacrifices of the members of the armed services, and especially those that were recently killed in the line of duty in Afghanistan. So just wanted to acknowledge military appreciation night went very well. The other things that have happened, Boone Carroll Elementary School ribbon cutting took place on August 11th. Again, there were a lot of people involved. I think it was well attended. Kids were excited, the families were excited. They got the opportunity to see the school. I want to thank Keller Farms, for example. Mr. Biggin pointed that out, but they donated several pots of flowers that at this time of year they kind of go to waste at their greenhouse, and they contacted the district and wanted to donate some pots, but it was really nice to see the number of people participate there. The back to school events and open houses, again, were all well attended. The high school and middle school did a kickoff event. The elementary here did some open houses. It's been a good start, but it has been challenging with the Ohio Department of Health and Fairfield Department of Health continued quarantine guidelines. We've had a thin staff in some departments. I'll be honest, the nurses, myself, some administrators, dealing with the cases, the routine cases. We're just kind of running out of gas on this. I just don't know if it's sustainable. The health department knows it's not sustainable. We're doing their contact tracing for them, and it's just been tough. But we've had staff members that have been impacted by this and continue to be, as well as students and families. So it's just been a challenge.
That's not required, correct? Contact tracing.
They asked.
They have sent it back. They have sent it back to us, and it's clearly our responsibility to notify them of cases, to notify them who we think the contacts are. If there's any disparity, they then get involved. But
Was that, mandated? Because initially
it's
it wasn't.
it's not in the health order, but if we don't try to work with them in some way, we'll probably be considered almost negligent in trying to help to protect the public safety and the safety of our students and staff. So,
Is there anything we can do, whether it be nursing additional
Or sub to come in and help do that,
resources,
Yeah.
additional nurseries that we talked about, I think just something to think about.
right.
Maybe there would be some pressure.
What has helped is honestly, I've been clear to our nurses that, look, there's a time that you're done with your work of the day. You can't spend your whole evening like we have in the past doing this, and every Saturday and Sunday. And we are sending our notices as required by the Department of Health order to the parents of students in the building and classrooms, if there's a student in the classroom. But I'm not asking our nurses and principals and myself, I send a lot of those letters out to continue to do this on Saturday night, Sunday mornings, not go to different places that you'll see your own kids do things because you got 3 or 4 cases that you have to send a notice out on. So we're trying to keep it during the workday. And we're not, we're just pacing ourselves to get it done and keep chipping away at it. So I made that clear about our expectation. But it's just been tough. What's nice is the nurse, now that this school is one school, the nurse is here. She's not over in Lithopolis and then has to drive over here. Or they don't have somebody at the K2 building because the nurse is assigned to the 3-4 building at that particular time. So it's been more efficient. I just wonder, in my question every week when we meet with the health department and the health commissioners, how much longer are these guidelines going to be in place? Because if they're saying it's not sustainable, if they're the health officials and they have the contact tracers, or they haven't built a staff to have enough contact tracers, how do they expect us to continue to do our job and do the work of the health department? So I think it's a fair question, and I do think there are changes coming. I'll get to that in just a second here, but I kind of wanted to let you know that obviously, when we talk about these quarantines, we're seeing right now that there's a pilot study being done in Warren County, and it's looking at the possibility of close contacts in the school setting staying in school if they are symptom-free, and potentially wearing a mask or testing after that exposure in order to stay in school. My concern is the hospitals are overwhelmed already with testing. Thousands of students are out of school across Ohio because healthy students are out of school because of the quarantine guidelines. And they're going to continue to overwhelm the urgent cares in the hospitals with more testing of healthy people to get back into school if they use the exact model of the pilot study being done. So I've communicated with the governor, with the Ohio Department of Health, with state representatives, with OSBA, with BASA, trying to explain that at times it appears that more damage is being done removing these students from school than good. There are students that have been quarantined 3 and 4 times over the last year. That's an extra 40 days of school or a grading period that they missed in addition to all the other days. So something's got to give at some point. I don't think the virus will be eradicated completely, and health officials may have to make some adjustments if they want kids to go to school. So other things about the start of the school year, the morning and afternoon procedures out here are going well. Obviously, there's a lot of parents still dropping their children off, but the flow, everybody's kind of caught on to the flow and it's working. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. The first few days it took 20 to 25, but once we got in the flow, 10 to 15 minutes, which is a reasonable dismissal or drop off in the morning. Bus driver shortages, issues for all schools. We're seeing staff members with routine illnesses, also staff members that are quarantined due to a spouse or a child being positive in their house, then they have to quarantine. We've had buses, buses 13 and 14 we didn't have drivers for. Just so you know, we pay, in terms of bus driver pay, we pay right on the average in the county. For full-time drivers, we're above the county average. It is tough to find bus drivers, but last Friday I had to cancel 2 routes in the morning. Our transportation department did everything they could with the staff that we have available with a license. We even pulled a custodian that has a CDL that has been approved as a bus driver, and we're still, when they call at 9 o'clock at night and they say, hey, I have to quarantine or I'm ill, and there's no other subs left, it's presenting challenges. The biggest area has been transportation, definitely, to start the school year. We are recruiting, promoting the transportation positions as much as possible, but a lot of districts are struggling with this. We've had times where we couldn't get drivers to take athletic trips right after school for the middle school or high school. The elementary routes are not finished until sometimes 4:15, 4:20, 4:30. So we got to wait for those drivers to get back, and then we're kind of late going out. So those are some of the struggles that we're having. In regards to, I want to let you know that the state did bend the deadline. Blended learning is when instruction occurs primarily in a supervised physical location away from home, such as school. But there's a blended learning model where you can teach kids online. That's different from online learning and having an online school. But let's say we had to shut down due to an outbreak this winter, in one of the elementary school or maybe the middle school or high school. They did come back recently in the last few weeks, and they said that we would accept a blended learning declaration that would allow you to take a school and transition that whole school to online learning for a few days. So I did fill out the form in case we get into a situation where we're in danger of not meeting instructional hours, and that would be an option if we miss several days in a row. If we had to do it for a day or two, probably not, because the amount of logistics to get online learning going and devices in everybody's hands at the elementary. But that's something we could do if we missed a week of school, or 10 days. We could transition very quickly within a couple of days to a blended learning, and then get back into school hopefully. So COVID cases in the district, I did put the COVID dashboard back on our website. We're currently, when I say active cases, these are students that are attended school during their infectious period, or a staff member that attended during their infectious period, which is the 24 hours. Now that's changed too. It's now 24 hours prior to the onset of symptoms, or 24 hours in asymptomatic cases for people that are asymptomatic but tested. They'd have to go back 24 hours to see if they were in attendance. But as of today, at this moment, most of it is with our high school, much more social group of people. We have 6 student cases, and they're all at the high school in terms of active cases right now. We have 13 students that are no longer during their infectious period that have had cases during the start of the school year. And currently, there are 3 staff members with active cases, 1 at the district staff level, and then 2 at the high school. So right now, again, 6 active cases for students, all at the high school, and 3 active cases for staff, 2 of those at the high school and 1 at the district level. So just to kind of keep you up to date, the quarantine, like I said, is really, it's difficult, discouraging to see the kids break down, to see the parents upset. Basically, the government's given us a couple options. If the student is wearing a mask, or if they're vaccinated and they happen to be in close contact, that's the only way that they will not be quarantined, but they have to remain symptom-free to not be quarantined. So if you're within that 3 feet and you're not wearing a mask and you're not vaccinated, and you spent more than 15 cumulative minutes next to a positive COVID individual during their infectious period, then you would be out for at least 10 days, but you could get back after 7 because you're allowed to test on day 5 after exposure. So again, I've had 6 updates to quarantine guidance in the past year, and I think there's another one probably coming soon. Okay. So students quarantined, currently there are 7. I will tell you this, we've been very conservative. If we are not sure, I have asked our nurses to work with the health department, and last year they probably erred on the side of, hey, let's put this student out of school because we're not sure, or from an activity. And if we're not sure, we're telling the parents, watch your child for symptoms. If they develop symptoms, please keep them home, contact the doctor. But we're trying to keep kids in school as much as we can and still follow the requirements that we have.
That's 7 current.
7,
active. How
yeah.
many total?
How many total?
You mean the kids that are contact traced? Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
so 7 are quarantined at this right now. So how many have been quarantined?
Yeah, I
For the whole
can
school
tell
year?
you that. I can tell you that.
So there's 1 6 and how do 1 7 of those contact traced?
Yeah.
So,
You're saying quarantine are active,
Right now.
this is
right? But that's
But
not.
there could be ones from.
But there could also be other like siblings.
we are not counting the kids that are in quarantine due to a mom or a dad.
Or a
that's
sibling.
positive.
Okay.
Okay, just the ones from school contacts. But this school year, we have had to quarantine 47 students. 47 students. Okay.
Okay, now, do you have it by building?
Yes, I could send that
Well,
to you.
yeah, you can send.
What's his name by
Because I'm
building?
because I'm curious, right, in the high school.
Yeah.
There would be everybody has the option to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
And any not.
In grades 3 to 5, we've quarantined 5. In grades K to 2, we've quarantined 2. Currently, the number of students we've had in the elementary would be 2 students at this point that have been positive. Okay, so we're seeing the cases with the active, very social high school. Yeah. But yes, parents have options. They can do nothing. They can put a mask on their child. They can get them vaccinated. But that's, at this point, those are parent decisions. You know, yeah. Last part, I wanted to give you an update. So within the last 2 months, we have looked at Ohio State testing data from the spring of 2020, and the state went ahead and did the same thing. You know, we looked at different graphs at the spring of 2018, the spring of 2019, and the spring of 21. In the spring of 20, there was no testing. I thought this was really interesting. Obviously, we saw the impact. We did much better, as you guys know. In 20 out of 20 testing areas, we either met or exceeded the state average in the percent of students proficient in each area. But we noticed in math that as a cohort group, we saw a drop in the percent proficient in math in every area. In ELA, it was kind of up and down. We saw some drops, we saw some increases. But at statewide, if you look at the statewide average, 20 areas, the state averages are the lowest they've been in several years. The state averages dropped in 20 areas in the spring of 21. The ELA scores were down 8%, and math proficiency decreased by about 15% statewide. So as you know, there was a lot of kids that missed a lot of school over the last year and a half. Student enrollment statewide was down 3%, which was about 53,000 students. Half the decrease was in preschool kindergarten enrollment, which may have more consequences down the road in terms of early childhood education. 24% of Ohio students were chronically absent, missing more than 10% of the school year. Bloom Carroll, our chronic absent rate was 3.7%. Okay, so if you're under 5%, you don't even have to comply with House Bill 410 on some of the attendance requirements. But our kids have been in school. A lot of kids have not, and I think we got to do everything we can to keep our kids going. Enrollment, we'll look at that in a little bit, but we definitely have seen some increases in enrollment. I think right now, even the update that you have in the board packet, we've seen a few more withdrawals, but we're at about a net increase of 78 students. Some of those are BLA students that have come back. BLA students were always counted in our enrollment from last year, but some kids did go to online or community schools. Those kids have also come back. But we've seen huge increases in first grade, second grade, third grade with 16, 18 new resident students, fifth grade, 17. But then you have withdrawals as well. But overall, we're up about 6 kids per grade level. It's our average right now, we're averaging about 24 students per class throughout the district. So we're going to have to keep watching a few areas. But as you know, as you see the homes go up everywhere, typically there's students involved in that. So we just have to continue to plan, and we'll talk about that more in October at our planning session in terms of looking at staffing and resources and those types of things. So there's been a lot in the last month. I'm sorry for the long update, but those are some of the things going on. So any questions?
That's one more. So the president, Friday, mass vaccination requirements.
Right.
Have we looked into that yet?
Yes, I have so far, and typically the state of Ohio mandates vaccinations for Ohio's K-12 schools. Ohio schools are under state control. There are even the state-required vaccines that are required in the Ohio Revised Code. There are exemptions for conscience or religious reasons. I don't see the state government this time mandating this particular vaccine for students. If they would, I believe the exemptions would be put in place. When President Biden is referring to mandates for vaccines for employers with 100 or more, those are typically schools that are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Defense or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which would not include an Ohio K-12 public school. So at this point, we're operating it as we have. So currently, there would be no change unless Governor DeWine mandates, in the General Assembly mandates. Okay, let's move on to 9B, page 3. Approve May 14th, 2022 as the date for the junior senior prom to be held at the Aladdin Shrine Center in Grove City, Ohio, tentatively scheduled for 7 to 10 p.m. Number 2, approve the Addams Family as a high school musical to be performed March 24th and 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and March 26th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Tickets to be priced at $10 per ticket for seniors and students and $12 per ticket for adults.
Any questions? Need a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Abbott, seconded by Mr. Jimmy Johnson. Mr. Biggett, roll call.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Okay, 9C, Personnel and Employment, approve substitute list number 2 for the September 2021 as submitted by the Fairfield County Educational Service Center. 9C2, approve the employment of Denise Bloom as an elementary school teacher to be assigned to 4th grade on an initial sequence 1-year limited contract at step 10 with a master's degree effective August 19th, 2021, and that is to fill a previously unfilled vacancy due to increased enrollment. So we had the position. We had a resignation a few years ago. We held on to that to try to be a little bit more conservative there with the personnel costs. And now we're at a point where we were up over 28 per class. We needed to add it. We're back down to 24 per class. 9C3, approve the employment of Daniel Wampler as a 5.25-hour per day bus driver on a 1-year limited contract at step 0 and effective August 19th, 2021. And that is pending the acceptance of agenda item 9F1, Frederick Wall's resignation. 9C4, amend the work hours of the lunchroom monitors assigned to the elementary school from 2.5 hours per day to 2.75 hours per day, effective August 26th, 2021. Number 5, approve the employment of Hillary Stokes as a 2.75-hour per day lunchroom monitor at the elementary school on a 1-year limited contract at step 0, effective August 26th, 2021. That is pending the acceptance of agenda item 9F2, Michelle Howard's resignation. Number 6, approve the employment of Marcy Walters as a 2.5-hour per day lunchroom monitor at the middle school on a 1-year limited contract at step 4, effective September 14th, pending the acceptance of agenda item 9F3, Elaine Oster's resignation. Number 7, approve the employment of William Moore as a 2.5-hour per day lunchroom monitor at the high school on a 1-year limited contract at step 3, effective September 7th, 2021, pending acceptance of agenda item 9F4, Michelle McGee's resignation. Number 8, approve the following requests for salary column changes pursuant to the receipt and verification of official transcripts effective September 14th, 2021, and that would be for A through D as presented. Number 9, approve the following FMLA leave requests for up to 60 days for Jason Storts in maintenance and Nicole Smith, the middle school teacher. Jason Storts effective September 7th and Nicole Smith effective September 3rd. Number 10, approve the following classified substitutes for the 21-22 school year pending receipt of background checks. Terry Raver as an aide, Renee Smith as a lunchroom monitor, Brenda Weber as bus aide, an educational aide, lunchroom monitor, cook, secretary, and custodian, and Emily Coley as a secretary. Number 11, approve the following resident educator mentors, facilitators, and colleagues for the 21-22 school year as presented A through J. Number 12, approve the following athletic supplemental contracts for the 21-22 school year pending receipt of verifications and background checks as presented A through G on the agenda. Number 13, approve the following athletic department volunteers for the 21-22 school year pending timely receipt of background checks and certifications, and that would be A through G. Number 14, approve the list of school volunteers for the 21-22 school year pending receipt of background checks.
Any questions? I'll make this motion. Second. Motion made by Mr. Bratton, seconded by Mr. Rod Johnson. Make a roll call, please.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Under contracts and agreements, approve an agreement with VIP Rehabilitation Services to provide visually impaired student services for the 21-22 school year.
Questions? Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Sherman, seconded by Mr. Abbott. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson? Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Nothing under 9E, 9F, under personnel resignations and retirements, accept the resignation of Frederick Wald as bus driver effective August 13th. Number 2, accept the resignation of Michelle O'Connor Howard, lunchroom monitor at the elementary school effective August 6th. Number 3, accept the resignation of Elaine Oster, lunchroom monitor at the middle school effective September 3rd. Number 4, accept the resignation of Michelle McGee, lunchroom monitor at the high school effective August 25th. And number 5, accept the resignation of Brenda Cole as National Honor Society Advisor effective August 23rd, 2021. That stipend was split, so she had 50% of the stipend.
Question? Need a motion?
So moved.
I'll
Second.
second.
What?
Whatever.
You too.
Mrs. Sherman made the motion.
Okay.
Seconded by Mr. Rogers. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott? Mr. Jimmy Johnson? Mr. Bratton?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Item number 10, new business, nothing under there. Item 11, board reports and information. First up, facility management, Mr. Abbott, Mr. Rod. Any updates?
Was that punch list or whatever, is this done?
The issues log, there's just minor things that happen.
Right.
Someone's working through that. The outstanding items in terms of facility are the suppliers that are providing the black poly-coated chain link fence for the playgrounds in the back.
Okay.
Probably within the next month that they were gonna go ahead and install it. They may wait until the fair break when the kids aren't here to put the post in and put the chain link fence up. There's a gate out there. There's a few panels on the detention pond fence. It's trying to get materials from suppliers is about impossible, but Travis and I have been working with Summit on those items. Those were the major ones. Everything else is very minor at this point. So we're done. There's a change order to put a few more security cameras in to some areas at the end of the hallways. The stairwells didn't get cameras and we needed them.
Yeah.
Didn't get in the project. So there was a change order for that Summit's working on too.
Great.
I'm not sure really much. I mean, obviously, you guys are too, but we've heard great feedback as far as the drop off of it's very efficient.
It is. It's, for only having one way in and out of this site, it's pretty good design. We really worked with the engineers on that and the traffic study, and we met all the requirements. But it's a long line. We move through the back here and around the front and back out, but it's moving in the morning once we get going. So.
Personnel and labor management, Mr. Jimmy Johnson. Any updates? OSBA reps, Mr. Rod Johnson.
Reppin'.
Yeah, we got the conference coming up in November. Mr. Hahn, Mr. Bigham and I will be attending. I'll be the delegate. Might be a little late possibly, but that meeting, the delegate to the board meeting, FYI.
Mr. Young, myself, and Amber Harris will be attending the fall conference dinner on September 22nd. She's being recognized by OSBA for being the District 9 for 2 years, so we'll be up there at OSBA for that.
Awesome.
What's the latest on what we know about that? Oh, and Mr. Hahn? For that?
Probably this week.
This week? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get in touch with you about the meeting. Policy, Mr. Abbott, Mrs. Sherman.
Sitting right here.
Oh.
That's a big one.
I'll email you too.
Okay.
We'll have a fun time with Travis. We'll probably need an hour and a half. That's a big policy packet. There's a lot of legal updates over the summer.
Okay.
And it impacts a lot of policy references to revised code citations and stuff, so we'll probably need a long lunch.
Bring coffee
If you
or
guys
lunch?
can get away.
Is it better for you in the morning or lunch?
It just depends on the day. I'm always traveling, so,
All right, we'll try
We'll
to find
get
a
it.
date that works.
sure.
Probably won't be a 30-minute meeting.
Okay.
Safety, health, and wellness, Mr. Abbott.
I think we have a meeting coming up October 4th. They set out today or yesterday.
Yep.
Awesome. And then finance, Mr. Ron John, sounds like November.
good idea. We'll discuss that.
Yep.
Great. Item B, upcoming PTO booster Board of Education meetings. September 14th, MC Middle School PTO at 2:30 PM in the Middle School Media Center. 9:14, we have a music booster meeting at 6:30 in the High School Media Center. Same day, the 14th, there's a BCES PTO meeting at 6:30 in the elementary cafeteria. 9/27 is a teacher PD day, so there is no school. Our next meeting will be October 11th at 6 PM here in the elementary cafeteria.
Is this gonna be our permanent site?
Well, I mean, we can try.
Or are we going back and forth?
You never know right now, like, are we gonna have 30, are we gonna have 3, are we gonna have 1, you know, in terms of guests, so we tried the media center,
I think it's confusing.
well, yeah, so
I mean, if this is our new site, I feel like,
Well, when I say new site, like, we, at the organizational meeting, we approved the rest of this year, starting in September.
To be
out
here,
there. So
okay.
the rest of this year, so in January, you guys can decide where you wanna hold the meeting, but I thought since it was new. you know,
Absolutely.
It makes sense for now, but I don't think we have to hold every meeting out here personally.
okay.
Last one, October 11th, athletic booster meeting at 7 PM in the middle school cafeteria. Item 12, adjourn recess. Can I get a motion, please?
Second,
Motion made by Mr. Abbott, seconded by Mrs. Sherman.
I'm out.
May we get a roll call?
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rod Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes, I'm out, 6:46.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
You all
Hopefully you guys come back.